Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan from Fireside Knicks with my friends and co-hosts Dylan and Justin Backer. And in today's episode, we're talking about OG Anunoby. And, I think that this is obviously not a player you consider a superstar player. This is obviously not a player that you consider, franchise altering. But he's definitely a good player. There are some things he brings to the court that the Knicks need, most notably defense and three-point shooting. But really the question here isn't, does OG Anunoby help the Knicks? I think that that's an obvious yes. But the question is whether at his price tag he helps the Knicks, whether he's worth it at his price tag, considering that the trade market's kind of been inflated over the past few years. You think of the Rudy Gobert trade as one that's really kind of broken the trade market. Now it's not too crazy to suggest that OG Anunoby is going to net 2 or 3 first round picks. And I don't know if that's a price tag the Knicks want to be paying for a player that probably doesn't raise them from their, second round, maybe dark horse Eastern Conference contender to really anything much more than that. It's not like it makes them a finals team. So, there are concerns about whether the Knicks should pay that price tag or not. But I wanted to let you guys get in on this and kind of, tell me your thoughts on OG Anunoby and, kind of what you would pay as a fair price for him. Justin, I'll start off with you.
Yeah, so when it comes to OG, like you said, I think he's a great player, a good fit on the Knicks too. We need defense and three-point shooting. He's a big wing that can guard basically all 5 positions. And, obviously provides the shooting. So from a fit standpoint, I think it's a good fit. But like you said, the price tag could be extreme. Like, how much does OG Anunoby move the needle for the Knicks, So, if you're giving up 3 first-round picks plus a player or two for OG Anunoby, you're kind of setting yourself back. You know what I mean? So, it's a question of, does he move the needle? And I don't think he's like a difference maker, like that much of a difference maker. It's where okay, the ceiling right now is second round, possibly conference finals. We don't become a finals team by adding OG Anunoby, but while trading other assets. So it's like a mixed bag for me. I think he's a great player, great fit. It has to come at the right price. I don't want to give up, RJ plus a whole bunch of picks or IQ plus a whole bunch of picks, because that kind of just makes us worse almost. So that's kind of where I stand on that right now.
Yeah, no, with OG Anunoby, like you said, I mean, yeah, he makes the team better if you were to add him, defense, three-point shooting. He shot like 45% on corner threes this past season, and he led the league in steals per game at 1.9. So, he's obviously very good in the 3-and-D department. He's probably like the best guy available in that type of like play style area. But like you said, the price tag that Toronto will be setting on him, it's expensive for him, man. They want like 3 first-round picks and a young player or two as well to go along with that. They want a lot. They value OG Anunoby as like a very like valuable, nearly all-star caliber level player. And he is a very good player. So I understand the Raptors kind of want to get the most out of the value he has right now. But at the same time, like you said, would a move like if you traded, say, let's say you got OG Anunoby for like quickly Fournier, and 2 first-round picks. I put that trade proposal up on our Fireside Knicks social media pages the other night. A lot of you guys were commenting on it. I was really loving to hear what you guys thought about that. But, something like that is something to wonder because, like, the Knicks have the whole, Emmanuel Quickly extension situation. If they can't extend Quickly, do they offer him in a trade package for somebody like Anunoby? Do they do something like that? Do they tie him to a trade package to a much like better player, like closer to an MVP type player? Who knows what they do? It's something to consider. I don't necessarily think that like you have to do that though for OG Anunoby. Like I feel like if you can kind of see if you can lower the price tag just a little bit, if you can, if the Raptors raise their price tag from the bar I set with my proposal, then I think you need to walk away from that because like you said, Anunoby isn't a guy necessarily that's gonna instantly turn you into a finals contender. I feel like you still need to add some more star talent around them. I feel like you still would need to do that. I think Anunoby's a good player, and I think, yes, the team would be better, but I do think there are still teams in the league that would be better than the Knicks, even if you added Anunoby to this team currently right now. So, like you said, you could argue that maybe if you did get rid of Quickly, then we would be worse. You can argue that. There is an argument for it. There's rationale behind it. I'm not necessarily saying that it would definitely be the case, but I do see the argument behind it, because Quickly is obviously very valuable on both sides of the floor as a guard. Yes, he can't guard larger players, but that's just because of his size. That's where Anunoby has kind of the advantage. He's able to guard multiple positions. He's able to guard, power forwards, larger small forwards, and of course guards and stuff like that. So yeah, of course he's got the advantage there. And you could argue that maybe Anunoby is just a slightly better shooter from outside just because he's really good from the corners. But, that doesn't necessarily mean quickly is bad at shooting, let's say. He's obviously a very good shooter. Yes, he overall in his career he's been a little inconsistent from outside, but for the most part he's been a pretty reliable shooter for what it's worth. So, it's something to consider. It's something to consider. It's a tough conversation to have because it's a trade that's like, yes, on the surface having Anunoby sounds great. It's just the price tag is the main drawback and something that's making us Knicks fans like hesitant to be like, yes, let's definitely go get him right now because it's a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to do. This isn't like this isn't like like when they signed Dante DiVincenzo, it was like, oh, sign him. We all know we're gonna be able to sign him. We know it'll just be a done deal. No, like something like this is tough to do because it requires you to have to move certain valuable assets that the Knicks have been valuing for a while. Quickly is a huge reason we got to the second round last season. Yes, I know he kind of was a no-show in the playoffs, but his regular season performance was a key reason why we were able to be in the position we were to get to the second round. So it's a tough conversation to have. I'm curious to hear though, Ryan, what you think about an OG Anunoby trade. Who do you, if they were to do a trade, like who do you think you'd be willing to part ways with? Who would you be willing to not part ways with? I'm curious to hear what you got to say about this.
Yeah, so where I sit at with this situation is kind of simple. I think OG Anunoby helps the Knicks. I definitely do. Overall, I think if you, have Grimes and OG Anunoby out there, both of whom I think were like 1 and 2 in matchup difficulty. I know Grimes led the league. I'm pretty sure Anunoby was either 2 and 3 on that list. You have two guys who are normally taking on extremely tough assignments, now taking on tough assignments together. It lowers the pressure on both of them. It gives them a reliable help defender. I think it really helps Grimes allow himself to divert and focus a little bit more on offense, where I think he's an extremely talented player, but still needs his touches and still needs some refinement in his game. Last year, we saw him as an extremely efficient scorer, was efficient from three, was efficient inside the arc as well. I believe he shot over 60% from two. So, overall, just doing a lot of things extremely well offensively. I'd love to see him build on that. And Noby's great on the catch and shoot. We had actually recorded this episode a week earlier, and, me being a dingus, the files no longer exist. But we did discuss how OG Anunoby kind of struggles when handling the basketball, right? He has issues with turning the ball over on drives, right? So, having him next to Brunson and Randle will be perfect because these are two ball-dominant players, right? And Anunoby can work really well in a catch-and-shoot situation. His numbers from the corner, his numbers on catch-and-shoots are phenomenal. He can occasionally, get different looks and different shots. And, as long as the Knicks are getting the value they're looking for from the perimeter, anything else you get from him offensively is gravy because the defensive value is going to be there. From Anunoby's standpoint, yes, the Knicks didn't space the floor very well, but the Raptors shot under 34% from three, and they didn't take a lot of attempts. The Knicks were inefficient, but they took a lot of attempts. Now, part of that's because of their offensive rebounding, but that's still something that they have, right? So, you'd be running with Quentin Grimes and Jalen Brunson, both of whom are extremely efficient shooters. Randall's a high volume, more, league average efficiency type of guy. I do think OG Anunoby I think the idea of OG Anunoby stems more from the player type he is, which is a great shooting wing who can defend. But, I know we're out on Paul George, but, that's more of a player that Paul George is more of a player that you kind of look at as, all right, not only is he that excellent, perfect fit for this team, but he's also a superstar. So you can win a finals with him, right? You don't get that same feel with Anunoby. I guess in theory, what is the ceiling of a team that has 5 really good starters, right? Like, what does that look like if you have Brunson, Grimes, OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, and Mitchell Robinson? But end of the day, the postseason is a different animal. You guys kind of mentioned this with Quickly, right? Great regular season, not a great postseason. A lot of guys are just going to naturally get worse in the playoffs. Tougher defenses, you're facing better competition, right? Like, that's expected, that's normal. There are only a few guys in this league who can get better and can rise to the occasion and go out and drop 30 or drop 35 or, have one of those historic performances. For as great as a lineup with 5 above average starters would be, there is no Giannis stopper in there. I know that stopping Giannis is kind of impossible, but there's no one you feel like can go toe-to-toe with Giannis there. Brunson can get close in terms of offensive output, but the defensive output doesn't come close. So, I guess, and I kind of wanted to pass this off to you, Justin, with this kind of thought in mind. do the Knicks feel like right now the big move they have to make would have to be for a superstar? Would you be okay with just, all right, the superstar wasn't there, let's just hold on to our assets and wait for another crack at it next offseason or next trade deadline? Because that's kind of where I'm at with this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think they need to go rush and make a big move right now. They have like the youngest rotation out of like all the playoff teams last year. They have like by far the youngest rotation. I think the average age was like 25. You know what I mean? Both of your two best players are 26, I believe. Brunson is, and Randall's 28, somewhere around there. They're not old. Those are your best players. Those are like your oldest players. Randall and Hart are like the oldest players on the team, basically, at this point that actually play. So, I think the fact that the rotation is so young and they're still growing and the team is already good, they don't need to go rush and make a, irresponsible trade for a player that doesn't, raise their ceiling to a finals contender right away. They don't need to do that. I think that would just cripple the team, to be honest. It would be shades of Carmelo Anthony trade back in 2010, whenever that was. It would be shades of that, to be honest. So, I don't think they need to cripple the team right now. I say, honestly, if the Knicks ran it back with the same team, the current roster that they have, if they ran that back next season, I would be perfectly okay with that. I want to see this team grow. They're still a young team. I want to see what we have. And I'm sure honestly, it could help us in the long run. If some of these young guys have a really great season, they take a leap, now their value just went up and our options expand even more. So I personally would be okay running it back. I don't think they need to go out and make an irresponsible trade, like I said. So I'm not in any rush, I guess.
Yeah, no, I actually agree completely. This team's very young. They just made the playoffs. They just made the second round. They don't have to go get a superstar right now. The ones that are available, they don't need to make something irresponsible. I would love for them to get a superstar. Don't get me wrong. I want to kind of rephrase that, but you know, like you said, they don't need to make an irresponsible trade that sets them backwards. Because they can do that. They can easily mess this up and make a trade where they get rid of a lot of the important pieces from last season for a player that either won't end up being a good fit, won't work out, or they end up underachieving. And then they're set so far back for the future because now they just gave up on all those young assets for basically 1 to 2 years of potential success. Keyword potential, and I think you hit on a key point too. If you keep these young guys around and you let them, continue to develop under this system, you let them develop chemistry with the team that they currently have right now, their value will go up. If you want to make a splash move next offseason when hopefully more superstars are available, because this offseason there wasn't that many like superstars available. There was Damian Lillard, but we all know he's pretty much a guarantee to go to Miami. So you're kind of out on that. There's Paul George, but the Knicks and the Clippers pretty much stopped the talks of that. They were never in on James Harden. Those were pretty much and then of course Joel Embiid as well, but he wasn't even necessarily guaranteed to even be available this offseason. They're more looking at like next offseason. So with that being said, I mean, it's okay if they kind of just keep where they're at right now. Maybe at the most sign like a backup power forward or elevate Roby to the lineup if they really feel like they got to do that. But other than that, they don't need to really do anything like too significant. I don't think. I think where the roster is at right now is perfectly fine. I think they're already a much better team than they were last season just by adding DiVincenzo alone. So, with that being said, I mean, like you said, they don't need to do anything irresponsible, shell out a bunch of assets for a player that isn't going to necessarily make us a finals contender. If that one guy was out there that was like 100% available, like someone that was definitely going to be off that team this off season and on a new team next season, then yeah, the Knicks should be more aggressive and go for that. But there really isn't that really kind of player out there really, other than like Damian Lillard and James Harden, but they're out on both those guys and we have enough guards already. We have a star point guard in Jalen Brunson who's only going to get better from what he did last season. He's only going to get better now that he just played a full season with these guys and developed some chemistry. He's going to get better. You still have an all NBA forward in Randall. I know Randall stunk in the playoffs. I know he's not exactly the most popular name amongst Knicks fans, but he's an all NBA player. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. So, you can leave it at that. You're getting a full season out of Josh Hart now, a guy who clearly came in and was a perfect fit. Now you're getting him for a full season. So that's good right there, and hopefully guys like RJ, if they, of course, if RJ is sticking around, of course, hopefully he takes a leap and, improves off of what was a down year this past season. If those things happen, this team will be in pretty good shape. Even if they don't make the finals necessarily next season, they'll be in a relatively good position to make a run at it, whether it means adding another piece in the offseason that really threads the needle a little bit. Sometimes it's got to be a process. Sometimes you can't just go out there and shell out all your assets for one one or two superstar players and expect to do everything. I mean, look at the Brooklyn Nets, for example. They and then they traded away basically everything they had for James Harden, and it didn't work. They don't even think they made a conference finals, and then Harden forced his way out and all that stuff. And I know it's not exactly the same situation in every aspect for the Knicks and all that, but it's an example of just how careful you got to be when you're moving your assets sometimes, because if you do it irresponsibly, like Brooklyn did, you can be in a tough spot for the future. And yes, Brooklyn kind of lucked out, and Mikal Bridges took a massive leap when he came over, but sometimes that's not exactly guaranteed. If the Knicks did the same thing, who knows? What if that didn't happen? If the Knicks did something like that, if the Knicks had star players trade them away and that happened or something like that, it's just tough, man. The trade market's tough, and I kind of applaud the Knicks for being a little patient with this, because if they do something, like you said, if they do something irresponsible, it'll look really bad. It'll be a really bad look. Anyways, I know I'm rambling a bit. I want to hear Ryan's take on this, so I'm gonna pass the mic over to you. What do you think about all this stuff?
Yeah, so, ultimately, I think that, the Knicks are in a weird spot where, not that you don't want to get better, you want to get better, but you don't want to blow away all your assets, right? This is the fork in the road you're in, and you don't want to go down the Timberwolves route. Now, not trying to throw strays here at the Timberwolves. Actually, maybe I am. But, they're in a bad spot, right? Like I don't view the Timberwolves as a team that I necessarily think can compete with the Denver Nuggets, and they already have all their assets thrown away, and they have a lot of money thrown into players who may not be those championship ceiling guys. Do we know if Cat is a number one option on a championship team? I don't think so. Rudy Gobert, certainly not a number one option on a championship team. I don't think that it's fair for us to sit here and, I don't think it's fair for us to sit here and say that we don't want this team to get better, because that's not what we're saying. But what we're trying to really hammer the point home is, you have to know that is your guy. You have to know that is your guy, that is the guy that is going to go out and, give you a real shot to, realistically to compete for a finals. You want to put yourself in a position where you can compete with the Bucks, you can compete with the Nuggets, you can compete with the Celtics, you can compete with the Suns, right? And that you enter a playoff series with reasonable odds to win that playoff series. And that's really what all you're asking for. So, that's how I feel about the subject matter. I'm not sure if you guys feel any differently. I'm not sure if you guys, are necessarily opposed to the idea of well, actually I am sure. I'm pretty sure you guys are opposed to the idea of like, hey, let's just throw assets at players for the sake of it. I know a lot of people were upset like, oh, Leon Rose is sleeping on day one of free agency, but realistically, like, what would you like these teams to do, right? What would you like Leon Rose to do? Who would you like him to pay for? Because right now, it's not like the Knicks have rotation spots up for grabs. That's not in the situation they're in. If that was a spot they're in, man, I mean, we'd be in a lot worse of a situation. Right now, we're in a situation where, the Knicks don't have the luxury of like, all right, let's, we have a hole at small forward. I guess the opposite of a luxury. Small forward is covered. You have a lot of guards. You have a lot of situations that are set in stone and are going to need big time upgrades for you to move off of them. For as much as Quentin Grimes struggled in the postseason from three, I still want him at shooting guard next season, right? Randall's struggles in the playoffs. Unless I get a superstar, I want him at power forward. Mitchell Robinson, I know I want him at center, right? Unless you get a superstar center out there, which doesn't really seem existent. And I'm sorry, I don't want Cat. That doesn't really exist out there. So. It's more so just the Knicks compared to the options they have available, they are about as good as they can be realistically. There's no reason to, slightly raise your floor and not at all raise your ceiling and throw three first round picks to do so. Now, with that being said, I think I would be okay with trading RJ for OG. That's a tough player to get rid of because of the fact that, there is that third round pick attachment to him, or the third overall pick, excuse me. The fact that there is that chance he could take off, that maybe last year was an aberration. If it came down to RJ Barrett for OG Anunoby, I think that's a trade people would make, but I think it's the picks involved. I'm okay with 2 pick swaps. I'm not okay with 2 first round picks. I guess that's kind of where I'm at. What do you guys think is like your line for picks to give up in order for you to be able to accept an OG Anunoby trade and feel comfortable with it?
Well, I feel like you said 2 first round picks sounds a little extreme, especially when you consider that there's players that are going to be thrown into that deal. Players plus 2 first round picks for OG Anunoby for who is a role player. It's not a superstar. Sounds crazy. I know the market, that's kind of how the market works now. So I would understand if that was the price, but I still personally think that's a lot. 2 first round picks plus RJ, for example. sounds insane for a guy who's not an all-star. He's not a superstar. He's a role player. So, I like OG Anunoby, but that's a lot to give up, to be honest. RJ Barrett was a former first-round pick, like you said, former third overall pick. And then if you did that plus adding 2 first-round picks, you basically are trading 3 first-round picks for OG Anunoby. I've seen superstars go for less. So I don't know. I think that's a lot. I know Masai Ujiri is not going to get swindled with OG, and it just never happens with the Raptors. They don't get swindled over there. Any deal that they make ends up going their way. So the Knicks need to be careful if they're going to engage in OG Anunoby talks. Is basically what I'm saying. They need to be careful. Don't give up too much. So that's basically where I stand. I would say the line, like my absolute no go, is 3 first-round picks. 3 first-round picks. 2, okay, maybe you can sell me, but 3, no way. 3, I'm not going to be sold. No way.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with you 100%. Like there's got to be a line to it because, OG Anunoby's not necessarily a superstar, like you said. He's a role player. He's a very good role player. One of the best 3-and-D role players really out there. But, like we said, he's not a superstar. You're not going to go get Anunoby expecting him to average 25 points a game, making all NBA team, all that stuff. No, you would get him to help reinforce what you already have and build off that. Help reinforce the defense, help reinforce the shooting, but not like, make the drastic difference to where Anunoby is the difference maker. He'll be a complement to what we have, and like we've been saying, it's not like Anunoby's going to be getting the ball a whole lot off when it's not a catch and shoot situation. You have Brunson and Randall to handle that stuff. You're not gonna ask OG Anunoby to create a shot for himself every possession down the stretch. No, you're not gonna do that. You're gonna have him sit in the corners and tell him if they pull off, on a double team, I'm kicking it out to you for a 3. But that's about it on the offensive side. You're not expecting him to do everything on that side of the ball. So if you trade away a bunch of assets for a guy that, not saying isn't going to play a huge role in the offense, but that isn't going to be like the number one option or anything like that, then I think you're just throwing assets away. You know what I mean? Like there's a line to draw, and like you said, 2 first-round picks, in a player or two, you can maybe we can negotiate a little bit. Once you hit 3 first-round picks, though, I'm hanging up the phone. We're not doing 3 first-round picks for a role player. A very good role player, but not a role player. Like, come on now. That's too much to do. And that's quite frankly why in the trade I put up on social media, I suggested quickly Fournier and 2 first-round picks. Not saying even that's a trade I would 100% do. I think it's a trade they could possibly engage in, but I don't think it's something that you definitely need to just be like, hit him up, be like, yeah, I'm ready to do this trade right now. No, I think it's something you kind of need to think about, consider before you really were to pull the plug on quickly and before you really just pulled the trigger and took that kind of trade. You know what I mean? I think it's a trade they got to be careful with, which is why I think what they're doing right now with this whole like conservative approach to this market is a good strategy. Like I've been saying, I think it's a good idea. You don't want to go too far into a player that isn't going to end up making you much better than you were last year, or that makes you just marginally better, not significantly better. You know what I mean? So with that being said, I mean, I'm curious to see how they handle this. I don't think they're really going to engage too far in Anunoby. Personally, I feel like they're just gonna kind of stay where they're at. Maybe they'll talk to the Raptors a little bit, see what they could get out of Anunoby, but I don't think anything significant will come through. If something does significant come through, then hopefully it's for the right price tag. I really hope they don't shell out too many assets for that, because then I'll be kind of disappointed. But that's kind of all I gotta say about it. I'm curious to see it. I like Anunoby as a player, but I just hope that if they were to pull off a trade for him, it would be for the right price tag, because if you do it for too expensive, then you're going to mess yourself up for the future. That's pretty much all I got to say. I kind of want to hear your final thoughts on it, Ryan. So I'll pass the mic over to you.
Yeah, so my final thoughts really are, I think the Knicks are in a position where they could reasonably, win a title with the right moves, and I don't want them to, I don't want them to shotgun their picks on a player that they're not 100% sure gives them a championship title or gives them the best odds to go out or their best chance personally to go out and compete for an Eastern Conference title and an NBA title. This is not a league where you get rewarded for, being a team without assets and the second round exit. This is not the league for that, right? This is not a high variance sport the way that baseball is. This sport is very much, if you're not the Nuggets, Bucks, Suns, maybe some other dark horse contenders in there, you're probably not winning the title, right? Like, last year, there was the Miami Heat were they were an underdog story. They were a Cinderella story, but that's what makes them a Cinderella story. And they still got trounced in the finals. You think of the other, 8 seeds to have playoff success. You obviously think about the Knicks and when they played the Spurs in the finals, the Spurs manhandled them, right? When they were the 8 seed that year. So this is not a high variance sport. You don't want to go in there as the 8 seed with no shot to win the finals. You want to go in there as a top half seed with a good shot to win the finals, or you're, a team that's competitive, gets into the playoffs, but is just waiting for that final piece and has the assets to make that trade go down. But with that being said, we'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this subject matter in the comment section below. We know you guys have a lot to say about the subject matter. I know that this is a pretty important topic, all things considered. I know that the Knicks are not, again, I believe they're out on Paul George. I would say they're out on James Harden, or at least I hope they're out on James Harden. And then in terms of like the Cats of the world, not only do I not think they become finals contenders with Cat, but, I don't think they're doing that right now. But with that being said, again, if OG Anunoby is the best guy available and they're able to get him for a reasonable price tag, that'd be a good get. But we'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section below. What's your price tag? Who are you not willing to give up? Do you think that OG even helps this team? Maybe you think RJ is straight up the better player, and we want to know what you guys think. Share your comments. You guys can tweet at us at Twitter on Fireside Knicks. We have an Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and of course this YouTube page. The audio version of this podcast will be out on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. And of course, you guys can check out our personal Twitter accounts. Those are above our heads. I'm Ryan Garcia. This is Fireside Knicks. And for my co-host, have a great day, everyone. Peace out.